Hurricane Sally, a Category 1 storm, slowly approaching the Gulf Coast. And continued wildfires across California, with the Sequoia complex destroying 108,000 acres. These are some of the events we will be looking at today, September 15th. As always, it's best to start with a top-down approach. Today we have a strong vortex up in the Hudson Bay region up to Baffin Island. That's driving somewhat of a northwesterly flow into central Canada. The main polar front jet, located up in Canada from the Canadian prairies out to Quebec. And we have a split flow pattern with a cutoff low off the Pacific Northwest and a southern jet coming on shore around Washington and crossing the Great Lakes. And then further south, we have another band of strong winds, 40 to 50 knot jet. This could be partly a subtropical jet. One segment across Arizona and California, the other segment from Texas to the Carolinas. And along the length of that southern jet, a trough across Arizona with a downstream ridge across Arkansas and Missouri. So that's indicating weak westerly flow across the southern states, and that will help Sally recurve as it moves inland. A very active pattern out in the Atlantic. It is September 15th, and we're just about to the end of the annual hurricane lettering system. Invest 98L moving off the coast of Africa may become Wilfred, and once we get to Wilfred, the next system after that will be Alpha, and we'll start into the Greek lettering system. But there we have Sally moving onshore into the Gulf Coast region, and Paulette moving north from Bermuda, where it crossed over the island yesterday morning. There's a very spectacular satellite image from yesterday showing the eye of Hurricane Paulette moving over the island of Bermuda. Fortunately, the hurricane did not produce major damage. It knocked out power to about over half of the residents. There were no deaths, no serious injuries reported as of today. But let's take a look at the METAR observations. Now, this is a METAR observation sequence, so the oldest reports are on the bottom, and we read from bottom to top. So we can see that they reached winds of about 89 miles an hour, then the eye moved over, and then after that, winds picked back up and gusted up to 70 before the station went off the air and stopped reporting. The current satellite imagery, the infrared channel at this time, doesn't show a well-defined eye. Using the Dvorak cloud cover scheme, this puts us pretty much in a T4 type storm, and I'm going to show you in a minute what that means. But let's take a quick look at the visible imagery. There it is. The center of the storm is filled with cloud material. However, it does have very active convective bands. We see a bunch of those springing up. That's these pulses that you see here. So we're going to want to switch over to the radar. Let's jump over to the radar, and then we'll look at the Dvorak stuff. There's the radar imagery. At the time we're recording this, several convective bands coming onshore in Alabama and Florida, and that region from Mobile out to Pensacola is about the hardest hit area right now. So the center of the circulation located about right there, and that's going to put it about 70 or 80 miles south of Mobile. The latest bulletin from NHC, which is about as good as it gets, 1 p.m., 80 miles an hour, that's going to put the storm in the lower Category 1 range. NHC's track going pretty much right into Mobile Bay as a hurricane and then inland into southeast Alabama. Now this is a very interesting graphic. I don't think you can get this anywhere on the internet that I know of. If you do know of a source, let me know. But this is from the 12Z high-resolution rapid refresh model, and it shows the composited maximum wind gust through the entire run. So the colors here correspond to the maximum wind during the entire time, and we're talking about gusts, not sustained wind. Now, this assumes that the hurricane track is like that. That's what the high-resolution rapid refresh model has been going for, and that has had a slight eastward bias. NHC's track currently goes a little bit more like that. So you would want to adjust this laterally if you're going to use this product. When I verified this for Hurricane Laura, it actually did work pretty well at most places. So we'll check it out again here. So you can ignore these little crescent moon shapes. These are artifacts from the color scheme that ESRL used. The general color pattern, that's what's important. Those greens coming inland, and that's signifying 80 to 90 knot gusts coming inland about 30 to 40 miles in a few patches, maybe a little bit further. So what we're seeing here is lots of 80 to 90 knot winds along the coastal areas, then dying off into 60 to 70 knot gusts inland, and then the 50 to 60 knot gusts into the southeast counties of Alabama. So we'll likely see some power outages through that area. The pine forest does tend to be pretty brittle, and you get lots of limbs falling down on the lines, and that will probably take out some of the power grid in localized areas as that comes inland. But the wind impacts should not be anything like Hurricane Laura. But we are expecting some tremendous rainfall amounts due to the slow forward movement and the high precipitable water. Lots of 15 to 20 inch amounts along the coast, and then we'll have this corridor of 7 to 10 inches going all the way to Atlanta and into western South Carolina. And there's the storm surges, 4 to 7 feet in coastal Alabama, 3 to 5 feet around it, and these will be prolonged due to the slow movement of the storm, and these surges could last 12, 24 hours or even longer. And that brings us to the Dvorak curve. This gives us a way of mapping infrared temperatures of the cloud tops of the tropical cyclone and using the patterns to determine intensity. There's a good Wikipedia article on this. There it is, Dvorak technique on Wikipedia, and it's got this cloud pattern chart. So we're in about the T3 to T4 range. That's going to be there, and you can see that does not include the eye patterns. The strongest intensities are going to look like this. And you can see it's very symmetrical in this kind of pattern with a well-defined eye. And you can see this very, very cold white band goes all the way around. But that's not what we have today. Definitely not a well-defined eye. But there is a very extensive central dense overcast there. Vigorous convective elements. So that's putting us barely in the 3, but pretty much solidly in the T4 range. The digital Dvorak wants to go even a little bit higher into the lower 5 range. So where does that put us in terms of intensity? Well, we scroll down to that scale there on the Wikipedia page, and we can see that if we're in the 4 range, we're kind of in the category 1 to lower 2 range, and the digital Dvorak wants to go into the category 2 range. So that's about where we're at, and what that would tell me is even though we're in category 1, I would not be surprised to see a little bit of intensification this evening, but we shall see. And there we have a quick look at the radar with GR2. Yeah, the center of the circulation right about there, and that's going to be at 29.5 by 88.1. And we switch over to the velocity, and we can see that cyclonic wind field. We have the strong outbounds located right there. That's flowing away from the radar at Mobile. And then we have the strong inbounds right there. The magnitudes, let's check that out. About 72, 75 inbound and 75 outbound. That's quite a bit weaker than Laura. We were seeing well over 120, 130. That was a big storm. But still, this is, of course, a dangerous storm, and the rain and storm surge is going to be a major problem with Sally. There's the surface map this afternoon. Sally coming onshore there with a 982 millibar center. We have a cold front across the southeastern U.S. It kind of loses definition, though. The leading edge, strongest around Charleston down to Savannah, but after that, can't really see it. The winds are out of the north. It is cooler than normal in many parts of North Texas and a little bit on the dry side. And a lot of that is because of this high-pressure ridge up to the north, which we'll look at momentarily. But you can see down there in Monterrey, Mexico, very cool conditions. They should be seeing 80s and 90s. But nope, north wind, stratocumulus, and that's indicative of a cold front, which is pushed well to the south. And there's our obligatory visible satellite image showing Sally coming onshore. Elsewhere, looks pretty nice across much of the southeast U.S., not including the system, of course. And then down in Texas, we pick up a little bit more of that moisture along the tail end of that front. In the northeast, a very nice day, but the smoke from those California wildfires has moved east, and it's causing this big shroud all the way from the Canadian Maritimes back to Iowa and Minnesota. Another little disturbance moving through the flow up there in Quebec and Ontario, close to the main polar front jet. And there's the picture in the northeastern states. Large stagnating polar high centered on eastern Pennsylvania, and that extends down to a ridge through the Midwest into Missouri. West of there, we've got strong southwesterly flow, bringing warm air up in Iowa and the Minneapolis and Madison, Wisconsin area, lots of 80s. But up to the north, looks like a little Alberta clipper bringing a weak outbreak of cool air into the Dakotas. And that'll probably be the next big weather change for that area. In the northwestern states, a very weak frontal system in central Montana, and it's got this cold front extending westward into Idaho and Oregon. Very cool 60s and even a few 50s in the northern valleys. And if we pan to the north, you can see where some of that cold air is coming from. 1028 millibar low up there in northwestern Alberta. It kind of looks to me like a lot of the wildfires are under control in Oregon. I'm sure there's a few localized burns going on, but overall looks fair across much of the northwestern U.S. But down in the southwestern U.S., we've got that Sequoia fire going in the Bakersfield, Fresno area, just east of there, and that's that smoke plume located right there. 108,000 acres burned in that Sequoia complex fire. That's the latest in the sequence of California wildfires, and you can see a few more of them going up in Northern California. Those have been burning for weeks. Overall, 3.2 million acres in California have burned. That's larger area than the state of Connecticut. And the death toll is 24 in California and 10 in Oregon. And we can only hope that we will get some rain or a lull in the pattern to help get these things under control. And with that latest cold air outbreak that we had last week, there are still some pockets of cold air that are in the valleys, and that's helping to produce this plateau high extending across part of the Rockies. Also, some of the stagnating polar air is trapped in the valleys of West Texas. Cool temperatures and overcast are the rule in that area. But out over the southwestern U.S., continental tropical air, in fact, let me just drop that symbol there, covering much of California and Arizona. So it's back to a early fall type pattern and some evidence of the heat low showing up as a trough across the San Joaquin Valley, and those temperatures will be coming up later today. It does look like there's been some improvement in the humidity. I can see lots of dew points there in the 40s and 50s, and that's better than it was last week. Relative humidity, of course, is one of the key components of wildfire danger, so we do like to see those numbers coming up a little bit. And due to the weak pressure gradient, you can see the long distance between the 1020 and 1016 millibar line. That's indicating that the winds should be on the weak side. Any gusts will likely be driven by strong heating, especially in the valleys. And that's all I've got for this edition of Forecast Lab. Thank you for joining. Take care, and we will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.